Well, hello and welcome to the unofficial Unreal Engine podcast, where we talk about all things Unreal Engine and also gelato birthday surprises. We're your hosts. My name's Alex, and next to me, returning, is
Jacob Feldman. I don't know why I said my full name this time, but hey, here I am. And
maybe some people didn't know.
Yeah, just in case. I don't know if I ever said my last name, but here I am. Welcome back to the podcast. Make sure you like, rate, subscribe, comment, whatever it is, wherever you are, however you're listening, watching, whatever it is. And thanks for joining us. I think we got a lot of exciting stuff to talk about today, and of course, we have a special guest.
Hi.
Special guest says hi. Welcome, Robert. Really excited to have you on the podcast. Robert, who you'll learn a little bit more about after we play our word association game, is a very talented Unreal developer, and also the reason why me and three of my closest colleagues at Agile Lens got to do a really cool thing last week. So we'll dive more into that in a bit. But Jacob, do you want to start right off with some fun games with Robert?
Sure. Yeah. So essentially, all I'm going to do is I'll ask you some. I'll say some words. You're going to say the first word that pops into your mind. No trick questions. All right. Home.
Leave.
Work.
Home.
All right. Food.
Eat.
Travel.
Enjoy.
Drink.
Alcohol. That sounds bad.
Sounds like there are a few words that came to your head. All right. Virtual production.
Alex.
Unreal Engine.
Epic.
All right. And then these are open-ended questions. So you can take a few words here. How do you take your coffee?
Cream and 0-calorie sweetener.
Okay.
Some variety.
All right. What's your favorite time of the day?
Nighttime. I'm not a morning person whatsoever.
All right. And when was the last time you laughed and like laughed really hard? And what was it that you were laughing
at? Probably like 30 minutes before this, I was laughing about something one of my employees said. I'm sure we have a fun time around here.
Awesome. Well, let us get to know you. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Sure. So off the bat, I am feeling not the best right now, so hopefully I'm still pretty lively. Picked up something in New York, and I don't get sick often, so tea hopefully helps. My name is Robert Aldridge, of course. Unreal Engine developer for coming up on 10 years, I think. It's been a long time. Professional of that in the past 6 years since I formed the studio, technically, although only 4 since we started the big current project. I enjoy travel and work.
Nice. Where's your favorite place to travel to?
So far, still, it's just been California in general. San Francisco's fine. I like LA better.
Good man.
Yeah. I hated Louisiana. Sorry, Louisiana.
Oh.
Yeah.
Ouch. Shame.
It wasn't. Yeah, like I was there for Unreal Fest last year, and it just not a great experience there.
So you're maybe a little happier about going to Seattle this October.
Yes, so much. My feedback on the feedback form last year was, can we please do it somewhere else?
Oh, jeez.
Man.
Sorry, New Orleans.
You'll be sad to hear.
Yeah, sorry, New Orleans.
Alex and I have been commiserating about how much we're going to miss New Orleans this year.
Don't get me wrong, there's some charm there, but it's very, feels very old and run down to me.
Yeah. Oh, man. Tell us a little bit about Big Top Game Studio.
Right. So technically, a studio formed in 2017, like legally. Yeah. So, as a Virginia entity. But theoretically, the studio has been a thing since around like 2012, in one form or another. I published my first game in 2020, I believe it was, which was, after years and years of working on different projects here and there and never, finishing anything. The pandemic hit, and I was like, I'm going to get something done. So technically it means I might have launched in 2021. I don't know. Time is difficult when you work so much, as I'm sure you guys know. But I launched the first game, Medieval Designer, which is like kind of like a prototype, or like not a prototype, a tech demo for like how I wanted to deal with inventory management and stuff in VR for a larger project later on. And I guess we can get into more of like how the studio is funded and all that at some point. But as of right now, skipping forward to the future, the studio is myself, which I do, everything Unreal. Probably favorite areas are optimization and like building tools. I guess it's kind of changed a lot over the years, because at one point I was like, I loved level design and it was my big thing, but it's moved beyond that since I have more people doing that now. I suppose that's a natural progression. So myself, Nathan, who is I think we kind of classify him as a junior engineer, if that's his official title. He takes systems that I design and, either polishes them up or I give him a blueprint for how I want them done. And then he goes through and, finishes them or starts them or what have you. He's come a long way since I hired him out of Panera. So very proud of him. Jackie, who is our level designer, particle effect artist, animation person. She does about a bit of everything. Megan, my wife, she does kind of a bit of everything, management kind of stuff and level design stuff and, a bit of everything here and there. She's worked with the MetaHuman creator a lot because our characters in our games we're developing are all MetaHumans, which is interesting on mobile, on the Quest hardware. But it works for the kind of graphical tricks we do. And then there's Gabriel, our sound designer and lead writer. And then we have another writer we just hired named Andrew. So yeah, that's our people right now. Oh, and Joshi Pashi VR. He's our marketing guy. You might know him from Twitter, maybe not. Maybe I
don't know. Awesome. So, what kind of experiences or games do you guys make?
So right now, we're building what is essentially a platform for our next few games of development, or at least that's what it kind of turned into. So I guess maybe I should give a kind of a backstory of how we got where we are. So after I put out Medieval Designer, which the whole purpose of that is really, it was kind of a tech demo to figure out how I wanted to deal with like VR development and like inventory management stuff, because I hate laser pointers with a burning passion. I can't stand them. It feels so bad in VR to me. If I wanted to use a laser pointer, I'd go work at Capital One or some shit in the boardroom, But so that game really, it's like, there's like 70 interiors or whatever, and like this whole empty kind of town, and you can just, there's like 2,000 objects you can use to decorate like all these interiors. It's kind of like the Sims decorate mode, but like in VR. It's there's a lot more I want to do with it eventually in the future, but it's just I put that out, and then I've been writing automation software, which is kind of my background outside of games. I've been writing automation software for this guy. And he's like not a gamer, or doesn't really follow the games industry or anything. But I showed it to him, and then somehow eventually we came to the terms of like, it was like, oh, you built this in 11 months. What if you had a team to do things? What could you do? So we set a budget, and then we started developing Heartlands, which is our big core title right now. But then about a year through development, we did a vertical slice around it took around 6 weeks or whatever to do the vertical slice. Had all the major systems of the game, buying and selling and dungeon crawling, questing, all that. Everything you'd expect from a modern Elder Scrolls-esque RPG. Took around 6 weeks to build. And then we started development on the whole thing. We had a very low poly art style. My business partner came in and was like, this is fine, but, it seems like the graphics could be a lot better. Why couldn't they be like some of these other games in the store? I was like, well, they can, but it's going to cost a lot more money and a lot more time and, frankly, a lot more effort. Which, he said, try me. So here we are, like 3 odd years later or whatever, still developing. But since then, it's turned into a platform for development instead, meaning we have a giant repository with all of our systems, how they're built out, because combat and the inventory system and a bunch of these things are shared amongst the technically 4 different games we are developing on this core set of rendering and systems engineering that I've done over the years. The biggest thing is how we're handling graphics on the Quest, the kind of stuff which is this particular thing is why Matt Ostale last year told me at Unreal Fest. He grabbed my badge when I was talking to him. He was like, "Why the hell does this say attendee? Why aren't you on presenting?" I was like, "I'm afraid of people, man. I don't know." So maybe I'll get around to that eventually. But yeah, so we're building this whole platform right now. The big thing we're working on is actually a smaller game called Heartlands: The Arena, which we announced technically publicly in Times Square on that billboard. The first time we acknowledged it publicly.
Saw that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. With art done for my wife, which is pretty cool. Yeah, so and Arena is kind of a scaled down version of the whole game because, frankly, games, as much as we all like to think about the fact that we're building this beautiful art and we're building this dream projects and everything, it's a business, and making an RPG is fucking expensive. So yeah, we're around $600,000 in right now, and that's a lot of money. So yeah, we're trying to build Arena, which is a smaller kind of slice of the whole experience. It's going to be a lot cheaper, a lot quicker to finish, but still the exact same quality bar as everything you would expect in the final game. And that's going to go out hopefully here within the next couple of months at the latest. Pretty excited about that. And then we're going to build another thing after that, and then we'll get around to doing core Heartlands after that. Depends on return on investment and all that kind of stuff. Fun business things that I like to avoid because I just want to make cool stuff. You know what I mean?
Yes, I most certainly do. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Fun time.
So, Robert, the reason we were so excited to get you on the podcast was I saw a little tweet. You and I have been following each other and seen each other at Unreal Fest for a while. And back on March 30th, I think, you had said, and I quote, I actually think I have the tweet here. You said, "Looks like me and most of my team will be heading to New York for the Meta Hackathon at the end of April. Should be pretty cool. I've never been to New York." And that made all sorts of fun alarm bells go off for me because I was like, wait a minute, what? There's a Meta Hackathon. It's happening in New York. And right as you were posting about this, I had just spent a bunch of time bringing a bunch of my team to New York, some of the remote members from Georgia and Arizona, to try to get us all in one spot. And I was thinking wait a minute. So now all of a sudden there's a thing happening in New York and you're bringing team members to there. What's going on? So I messaged you. You showed me a link. I couldn't believe that this link hadn't popped up in my feed elsewhere. Seemed like it was mostly being passed around to Oculus Start members and people who'd done the hackathon in the past. And I applied and my team got in and we got to hang out last week. What was last week like, Robert?
Last week was awesome. It was really tiring. As you can imagine, you were there. A lot of late nights, a lot of early mornings, but a lot of trying to go to sleep right before checking Twitter and seeing you probably gonna go to bed now, and it's like, dude, Alex, it's 4 a.m. What are you doing?
Having too much fun and
hacking away, just me. Yeah. So yeah, it was super fun. I got the invite back in February actually, to it. Um, Around I'm pretty sure it was like February 4th or February 6th. I only remember that so well because, not to make things sad or anything, my mother died on February 5th. So yeah, I remember when the invitation came in, and I was like, oh, this would be good to go to when that gets around. I didn't end up applying to it though until around March, whenever I sent that tweet out, because it was like 3 days they got back to me. And I'd been at the hackathon uh, in San Francisco at the Meta headquarters last year, which was also a super fun experience. A little different than this one, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear a little bit about the differences between the two. But just to set this up for anyone who's like, wait a minute, what are these guys talking about? So the basics are Meta said, hey, we want to build more stuff with mixed reality. They accepted 25 teams. They flew everyone to New York to get us all in the same place. They put us up in a hotel. And then each day last week, we were at Meta's office in Hudson Yards, hacking away, building mixed reality experiences. Out of the 25 teams, there were 5 of us, including both my team as well as Robert's team, who were inside of Unreal Engine. Everyone else was in Unity, except one very daring team who went into Godot, knowing that Meta was going to give them no support. But it was cool because we had there was on-site support. There was one person there, Connor, who was helping out on the Unreal Engine side. There was good food. There were surprise gelato and fruit smoothies, things like that. I thought they treated us very well. Would you agree, Robert?
Yeah, I think that the New York office is not nearly as cool as the San Francisco office, and the food in San Francisco is better. But I mean, yeah, but it was a good time. Yeah, but they need to up their food game a little bit compared to San Francisco. But other than that, it was pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. What are some of the other differences between the San Francisco iteration and the one in New York?
So the biggest things really was, this time they had a company deal with travel and everything for us beforehand. They seems to me like they rented out half the hotel, put us all in it. Whereas last time it was they gave us all, $1,500 to cover, travel and hotel, which, by the way, took a year to get there after the event. We didn't get it until like March of this year or something like that, or maybe it was January. But my business partner was like, "What is this deposit for $1,500?" I was like, "I have no idea." Turns out it was that. Anyway, they also this time, which I think was the right move, they had us form teams beforehand and apply as like a team. Whereas last year, it was like everyone applied individually, and then you formed teams when you got there. There's like a whole hour or two where you were just forming teams and doing ideation with people. They gave us our badges had like different colored stickers or whatever for like what engine you use and what kind of developer you are to help you find teams. It was an interesting networking opportunity, but also it cut into the actual hacking time, obviously. And the support for Unreal Engine last hackathon was basically non-existent. I'm pretty sure there were 2 teams that were doing Unreal. And my team, only half of us were Unreal developers. There were 4 of us. 2 of them were Unity developers that just needed a team. It was me and this other guy, Helder, Brazilian guy, who unfortunately didn't get to come. None of them got to come to this one for whatever reason. It was a lot of kind of the same. They would go over the presence platform capabilities. They went a little more in detail than they did this time. They had like classes, essentially, almost like sessions, talking about how each one of the things worked, and a bit different than this time. And also, they have a Meta store there, which is pretty cool. You could buy Meta branded stuff. Couldn't do that at the New York office. Not that that's necessarily exactly the same thing. Um,
Yeah. Did you get the same level of swag over there? So, Jacob, not to make you jealous, but everyone who came to this hackathon last week, we got a Meta backpack,
Yeah,
a Meta
mine's right over
water
there.
bottle, Meta notebook, Meta
behind that
pen,
sword.
and a Quest 3. We all got a Quest 3 just for showing up, which was kind of nice.
Yeah. Last year we got Quest Pros.
Quest
Yeah.
Pros. Interesting. Yeah, because the Quest 3 wasn't out yet, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, kind of all they gave us last year was the Quest Pros. That was the whole thing. And you could go into the store and buy Meta branded stuff, and like their like company store is really cheap too. Like you charge for like $7.
Oh wow.
Or maybe it was like $9, but yeah, it was super cheap. And they like notebooks for like $12 and stuff. I have a bunch of stuff around here. I don't know.
Yeah.
So
Well, let's zoom out to talk a little bit about hackathons in general and
Sure.
why they're good and when they're not. And also just to bring Jacob a little more into the conversation. Jacob, have you ever done a hackathon before?
I have done hackathons, and I've also done lots of late night hacking at projects I shouldn't be working on.
Right.
But yeah, I have. I found them. I mean, I feel like the biggest purpose of those events is the networking and the learning opportunities. I think building like it's an exercise that you don't always get to give yourself. Just building something that you have no like financial or other reason to be working on. I think that's always an opportunity for everyone. So I definitely recommend if anyone's listening and they've seen posts for hackathons, they've seen, hey, maybe I could sign up for this. You should definitely do it, especially if it's in an industry like gaming. I've heard so many great things about folks who really got an understanding for the
Like the way that like game teams operate from hackathons, or game jams, I guess would be the equivalent term. But yeah, definitely, I definitely recommend folks check those out. But this sounds like a pretty special one, I gotta say. That's some pretty cool swag. Especially just getting to stay up in a hotel in New York for a week. That's a pretty a pretty penny in itself.
yeah, it was it was a really cool experience. If they do another one in New York, I think hopefully they pick a different hotel because there was not a lot of space for us to work after they did.
Yeah, the tricky thing was that they did kick us out of the Meta offices at 9 p.m.
Yeah.
There was like a bus to send everyone back to the hotel, and like people could work in their rooms. They're small little New York hotel rooms. So ideally, teams were trying to find spaces to actually work together, which basically was like the restaurant, and there was trouble finding like power outlets. So it was really kind of a first come first serve kind of thing. The Agile Lens team and I were actually only a couple blocks from the hotel from the Agile Lens office, so we kind of wanted to just go over there, but it felt like it wouldn't be in the spirit of the thing. On the bright side, it does sound like on the last night of the hack, Meta had talked to the hotel and they didn't kick us out at midnight when the restaurant closed, and some of us were there pretty late. I think till like 3 a.m.
Yeah.
And hackathons in general, I think, are like Jacob said, just an incredible opportunity to dive into things that are kind of on a bucket list of like someday I'll look at that SDK, someday I'll look at that plugin.
Yeah.
And this was particularly exciting to me because I've done a lot of hackathons in the past, mostly things like Global Game Jam, which Microsoft has done a very good job of hosting in New York City in the past. No swag, but they would give free pizza and burritos and things of that nature. But every single time I've done another hackathon in the past, including the MIT reality hack that I did a few years ago, I was never successful in getting a Unreal Engine team. I was always there by myself and just kind of walking around being like, you want to do something in Unreal? You want to do something in Unreal? And I would always end up with not enough of a critical mass on that front. So I'd end up on a Unity team, which is fine. perfectly happy to make things in Unity, but this was a bit of a dream come true because I got to be there with, 3 excellent developers for my team. And we, of course, knew we were going to be in Unreal. And we got to dive into some of these SDKs that Meta has made for Unreal that have just been sitting there for a while, calling to us saying, like, come check me out sometime. Yeah. And what a cool opportunity to explore some of them. One I was really surprised by, I don't know if you played with this at all, Robert, the Haptic Studio. Really cool, really intuitive way to turn audio and any other, kinds of ways you might want to create a particular haptic effect, translating that into a file that can then be imported into Unreal as a haptic feedback experience. Super intuitive, super fun.
I did
like
that.
A whole Rick rolling thing. Yeah, go ahead. Oh, sorry, Robert. I thought you responded.
Oh no, I didn't touch that particular SDK.
Yeah. So we have a moment where we have I should mention briefly, like, we should talk about the projects we built. My team did like a mixed reality theater performance thing called Performer.
Yeah.
With an MR at the end for mixed reality. And as part of that, we have like a website link that you can bring up inside the experience. So if you wanted to have a script or a music video or an iTunes playlist or whatever playing, you can actually do that directly within the experience, which also gets around, some copyright issues, because it's like you're just going to whatever links you want to on the internet. And then as part of that, just for fun, we have a little button that says, like, click here for free money, and it's just a Rickroll. And so as part of the Rickroll, we actually have the whole song playing with the haptic feedback in the controller. So we did that with Haptic Studio, and
that's pretty great.
Unreal fine.
Yeah.
And Robert, your team made something really cool that seemed to be very different from your other work. Everything we got up to kind of felt like in line with the other work Agile Lens has done in the past. But why don't you talk a little bit about your project?
I gotta say, me and we loved the absolute production value of what you guys did.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. Frankly, surprised you guys didn't win. But we're a little hamstrung working with Unreal. There was some really good competition there this year. So we worked on. Excuse me. I was hoping I wasn't going to do that during this. Thanks, New York. The thing that we worked on was, as you mentioned, it's quite a bit different than what we usually do. And you talk about wanting to mess around with different SDKs and different features and stuff that usually you don't get a chance to do. And one of the ones that we eventually are going to rely on in Heartland's development, but we just have never gotten around to it, is actually the PCG framework that got released in, what was that, 5.2, 5.1 on there. Really, really fascinating framework. We really wanted to use the PCG framework in mobile, but there's not really a lot of great documentation on it, and it's possible that it just doesn't work on mobile at all. I couldn't find any information on that. What we ended up doing, though, is just using the PCG in the editor and just baking everything down to being these different environments. So to kind of get around with the entire experience is, or what it was planned to be, we had a hell of a time getting started. We spent like the entire first day not solving any real problems because we couldn't make the hand tracking functionality work, and then the pass through just would randomly die. We had a lot of problems there. And we ended up actually using the old method that I used last year at the hackathon, which, funny enough, I got some help from someone on your team, Alex, and funny enough, you guys did the exact same thing. And while I like that we had some kind of representation for Unreal at the hackathon, and Connor was great, he didn't really seem to have much of an answer for the issues, and there's
one person.
Yeah, I mean, it's better than having nothing or being laughed at, which is what happened at the last hackathon.
Oh, no.
We're like, we're using Unreal, and the guy from Meta laughed at us and walked away. That's a real thing. Anyway, so I'll talk about that. We spent the entire first day kind of messing around with the SDK and trying to solve the problem of it just not functioning on the headset. We couldn't get events to fire, or the hands wouldn't line up properly, or the anchors in particular, which we needed for this experience, just would not work unless we used the old method of getting the anchors to spawn. Which, if people don't know, the anchors are like you see an understanding, like this is a table, that's a storage, that's a ceiling, that's a wall, what have you. It can label all these different objects with semantic labels, and then you can use those to spawn whatever. So our general idea was kind of based around, we had a couple ideas before the hackathon, but we ended up, of course, not following any of those pre-planned ideas, and just kind of going with something on the spot, which is kind of based around the Bartle test. If you guys are aware of that, the different kinds of gamers. Are you aware of those, Alex?
No, please.
No, I'm not.
Okay. The Bartle test. And I really hope I'm remembering the right one. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Yeah, I'm almost certain. Anyway, it defines gamers into 4 different categories. There's the explorer, the achievement hunter, the killer, and the socializer. Right? And it's a pretty good. Usually, people fall into 2 categories heavily. One, they're the absolute polar opposite of, and then one sometimes is just they dabble into it. All of us on the team are pretty much universally explorers, with some achievement hunting and killers and stuff here and there. But we really wanted to make something with exploration. And that doesn't necessarily fit with AR, because if you want to do exploration, you're going to do a full scale VR application, and you're going to make a big forest and then cry when you realize that the quest handles overdraw very badly. So what we decided to do was a thing we called micro worlds, which essentially the idea was, we're going to have these tiny little worlds that, like, you have sparkles all over your environment. When you get close to them, they'll spawn in these procedurally generated worlds, and you can find like little plants and animals. And we kind of wanted to do a thing like in Starfield or No Man's Sky, where you have like a scope or magnifying glass or whatever, and you could walk around and like look at these tiny little worlds, and then you would have like objectives, like find a green spotted toad or something, and you'd walk around and find them. Or they would spawn in the wrong environment, like you'd find a camel in like a tundra or something, and then you could walk over and pick them up and take them over to the right their right environment or whatever. And I still think that's a really cute idea, and I really love it. But that's not what we ended up building altogether, because we didn't have enough time. Unfortunately, what we did build, though, and I'm super proud of what we did get built anyway, is we have 20 different animals and 71 different procedurally generated environments. That's kind of one of the things of Big Top Game Studio. And maybe this is a fault, we'll see once the game launches. But we tend to punch above our weight. And a lot of that's because, I have this background in automation, and I can write tools, kind of, frankly, more than any I've ever met. Not to say that there's not, a lot of crazy talented Unreal developers out there, but like the level of tooling we do is just nothing I've ever seen from any of the studio. And it's tools for all kinds of things. So anyway, so we had 20 different animals and 71 different environments, and they would spawn, and we had this particle effect, and at one point we had a sound, and I ended up not making it in. I don't know what happened there either. And you'd have the spatialized sound, and you'd walk over to it, and you'd get close to it, and it would pop in the environment, and then you could have your magnifying glass, which we used like the render targets or whatever to fake that. And I thought it was funny. One of the judges was like, "Oh, it's even like bowing out with the glass and everything." Actually, no, that was literally just the effect of the 3D mesh. It was not as fancy of a material as it seemed. So yeah, and you could.
I saw the same thing. It seemed like a bug you turned into a feature.
Yeah, But yeah, it worked out pretty well for what it was. Yeah, you tried it. You could look in all close, and you could see these little animals walking around. And then you could pick one up, and you could you turn your hand over, and it would spawn in your hand. It'd be super tiny though, so you grab again, and then it'd make it larger. And we had a bug that we ended up turning into a feature where if you kept doing this, it would just get larger and larger and larger, until eventually the collision stopped overlapping properly. So hey, it has a max size theoretically. It totally wasn't an accident.
That's funny.
Yeah, and then you could take the creature and you could take it to another environment. It would spawn there, and that's kind of as far as we got with it. But I was pretty
I'd love to kind of hear from both of you guys. What were the final products that you made? Like what were the experiences that you eventually developed?
Well, that was
go ahead, Robert.
Well, I mean that was the whole thing for us, is we finished that as best as we could. And it ended up being really just, you'd spawn in, and on like your tables and chairs and couches or whatever, little different landscapes would spawn, and you could pick up animals and look at them and with the magnifying glass and take them to other environments, basically. We didn't have the objectives we wanted, like find this type of animal and return it to its home, that kind of thing. But yeah.
I had a lot of fun inside your experience, scaling the animals larger and larger and larger. What was it like? You make a fist and it gets bigger.
Yeah.
And so just making some of these animals first, the very tiny size, then the actual size. Then I would see if I could make like a wolf the size of an elephant.
Yeah.
And that was kind of fun. And then, for Performer, the idea was that we wanted to have a mixed reality live performance experience where you could actually look across from you and see an actual actor, but then next to them, there's, digital puppeteering going on. So we really wanted to take advantage of scene understanding, which Robert has already talked about. So we kind of transformed the room you're in into something that's a little 1920s jazzy. We did start to call it steampunk, but only because of a bug we encountered later. But the idea was you start off in the lobby, you say whether you're going to perform or watch a show. We ended up using a combination of replication in Unreal Engine in addition to OSC to kind of get all the multiplayer data. But it could find a local server. We ended up using a hotspot on one of our laptops in order to do it because, of course, the meta internet was so locked down that it was very hard to do anything multiplayer from there. So you say you're going to be a performer, then you select what character you're going to start with. The characters we ended up with were Rick Astley, of course, a weird emperor cyber robot character. These were both metahumans. We had a dragon that had like a cool spline bendy thing going on, and then the mouth could move. We had a desk, literally just a talking desk in the vein of like Encanto or Beauty and the Beast, which could also spawn in place of an actual desk in your environment. And then we had what we called Deer God, and Deer God is this very weird looking green antlered character that we set up all custom mapping for. So Dante and our team had created the dragon and this Deer God character from scratch using Adobe Medium, so modeled the whole thing in VR. And then we rigged it to actually respond to the facial capture and the eye tracking from the MetaQuest Pro. So the idea, of course, would be a performer could wear the MetaQuest Pro and get all full body tracking. This was in combination with the Movement SDK, hand tracking, face tracking, eye tracking, full body tracking. And then the audience members would, of course, use a Quest 3, take advantage of the better pass through, and see this crazy puppeteering experience happening right in front of them. In addition to that, we also got in a big way into posable meshes in Unreal Engine, which are a little different from skeletal meshes because they're lighter. They don't accept atom graphs or animation blueprints. And so we also found a way to allow you to move around and strike different poses and then basically spawn these different posable meshes in your exact position. And we played with a few different things you could do with that, including setting up just like a bit of an art installation of all these characters in the middle of a scene. We played with setting up like a whole audience that could be watching you if you wanted to practice performing. And we had fun. We had almost nothing working as of, midnight the night before everything was due. And then everything kind of came together. And 90% of what we were trying to make work ended up working by the time we were presenting to the judges on Friday.
Amazing.
Very similar experience. Nothing was working until like the night before.
Yeah. Wow.
And we could also mention briefly some of the other Unreal Engine experiences just to give a sense of how other people were getting their work done in there. So Alex Morrow, who also used to work for Epic Games, and Charles Alexander, they had a piece called Soul Arc, and they submitted this under the tools category. And it basically uses the Sun Sky blueprint in Unreal Engine to locate you correctly, and then it uses the scene understanding of windows to actually show you the path that the sun is going to take in your current building. Either over the course of a day or, throughout the year, summer solstice, winter solstice, etc. So very practical, very straightforward. They were pretty much done after 24 hours and then, just walked around, seeing what other people were doing and doing some play testing and refining. And I know when we were exhausted at 2 a.m. in the morning the night before, it was like, man, jealous of those guys who are getting a good night's sleep right now because they did a very, very clear scope for what they wanted to build. They built it, did a lovely job, and we're like, we're done. Another team made a really cool, almost like Magic School Bus Google Earth kind of thing.
Yeah,
it was called Overroom, and Overroom actually used Cesium, which I didn't think could even work on standalone. And it basically takes your windows and kind of opens you up to this, Google Maps environment, and then picks up your room, so to speak, and flies you to these different places around the world. And I thought that was a really cool use of just a different way to approach mixed reality, as well as just getting a nice Google Earth VR kind of experience from around the world, because Google Earth never actually came out with a standalone version of their app. And then the only other one, now I thought there were 5 Unreal Engine teams, but this is only 4. And then that's it. Yeah, I think that's it as far as what I know of. Robert, do you know if there was another one I'm missing that used Unreal Engine?
No, I think that was it.
So just 4 of us.
Yeah. So I was surprised to hear that that the ratio was like 5 Unreal Engine teams to, what'd you say, 20?
25 total teams.
Yeah. Okay. So like 20 Unity teams.
The crazy Godot team, can't forget them.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's the level of insanity that I can get with. But I mean, did that surprise you at all?
Honestly, that was more than I expected, because again, like when I've done hackathons in the past, I've had so much trouble finding anyone doing Unreal. I was thrilled that there ended up being 4 Unreal Engine teams and that we could talk to each other and help each other out a little bit. And I think we all feel a little bit like second-class citizens. Yeah, Robert.
What I once said.
At a sports movie versus Unreal Engine, and so there was a bit of like a war buddy commiseration as we're all trying to make these things work that have not the best documentation and some code that's broken, and we're all doing whatever we can to just like force it to work as quickly as possible.
It's interesting. I mean, honestly, after all the conversations we've had recently about Unity and Unreal, and I mean, besides what we can understand from Apple and Apple Vision Pro and the relationship that's there between Unity and Epic, I'm still surprised that hasn't changed more dramatically in the past year or two. And I understand this is maybe a bit of a tangent, but I'm curious your opinions on why this hasn't changed more rapidly. Why aren't there more teams with Unreal? Like what are we missing?
Meta has told me that they would support Unreal Engine more if there were more Unreal Engine users building things for Quest, to which I would politely respond, if you supported Quest more, if you supported Unreal Engine more people would be building in Unreal Engine.
It's a chicken and egg problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. I like, do people come with their Unity licenses, or are most of these people professionals? Is that maybe the gap here? I'm curious about that, because like I remember, so as we've shared on the podcast before, Alex and I met originally at the MIT XR Hackathon.
That's right.
And at that event, there were, I want to say, 2 overall teams out of, must have been like 50 that year. Maybe 50. I don't know. It was a lot of teams that were using Unreal, and I was one of 2 people that were mentors at that event that were like walking around trying to handle Unreal questions.
And the other was Steve Bowler, who I slept with during that event. we were getting an Airbnb together.
Wow. but yeah, I mean that was quite surprising. Even at that point, but I guess looking back, that was pretty reasonable because at that time, what was the VR SDK that was quite popular? VR
for Unreal Engine or Unity?
It was a Unity package that's very popular.
VRTK.
VRTK, thank you. That made sense because VRTK was probably the best support you could get for a VR headset at that time. And Unreal was just kind of working. But today, I would assume that would be polar opposite, especially everything we hear about Unity, everything we hear about their internal teams and what's going on there. But I mean, it was honestly surprising to hear that from you guys.
Yeah, and part of it I think is also just who they're hiring at Meta. Like, I just don't think there's many people working at Meta who actually have any meaningful Unreal Engine expertise. If you look even at some of their sample projects, like most of the sample projects for Unreal Engine are being built by one, maybe two people. If you look at the change logs, versus if you look at the Unity samples, there's usually 5, 10, sometimes 15 people all working on that one thing, and that leads to us, missing out on what's it called, Robert? Like the interaction toolkit and some of these things that are really robust, out of the box templates and systems you can use in Unity, and there's just nothing like that over in Unreal.
Huh.
Yeah. I kind of wonder if part of it's a historical kind of thing as well. How Unity's kind of been more accessible than Unreal for a longer period of time, and I think still that people have this perception that it's hard to build performant apps for something that's as low spec as a Quest with Unreal, which it certainly takes some work, but it's in my opinion, a better tool set to do so. I also kind of wonder how many people at if building with Unity is a bit better of an experience in general, because maybe they have a larger internal team working on VR tools in general, which and then there's more people at Meta working on the same kind of tools for us to use, versus Unreal. Like, I'm pretty sure the entire VR team at Epic is 6 people.
Yeah, it feels like that.
I mean, from what I've heard, it's a small team. Yeah, last time I talked to Victor, at least.
Right.
Yeah, and one of them used to be Alex, and Alex is no longer there, so smaller by the day. And so I think it's we're counting our blessings that like these SDKs are there, that there are some number of teams and people who are making these things work. There's a lot of effort being done through companies like we talked a couple weeks ago with Sentient Art, who has released this awesome Luminanite Unreal Engine project that works in VR. So there's a lot of community things going on, but certainly I think we'd all be grateful for more official support should it ever happen.
I did hear on the last day, I can't remember the guy's name, but he went down in the elevator with me. Can't remember his name. That's unfortunate. But he was saying, asking what we thought and everything, and of course, saying same thing I say on all the forums, forums, the feedback forums they give, which is need better Unreal Engine support. And he said, in the next release, they're supposedly having a lot better feature parity with like samples and stuff. But would have been nice to have at the event. But
yeah.
So at least it's coming down the pipeline, and his exact words were baby steps.
Yeah,
sure.
We're getting
all right.
Cool. Anything else you want to say about the hackathon, Robert?
It's a fun time. It
was a good time.
Yeah, if anyone gets the opportunity, they should do it. If even if you don't win, it's a great networking opportunity. And it's also it really fires up creative juices, that especially if you're working on something longer term, like we've been working on Heartlands for years. It fires up creative juices that might have been lying a little dormant. You know what I mean? In certain areas.
Yeah.
Forces you to reevaluate.
Awesome.
Agreed. All right. Well, let's move on from the hackathon, and I'm sure there's a lot of people listening to the podcast saying, "Are they ever going to mention the fact that Unreal Engine 5.4 was officially released?" Because we usually do make a pretty big deal of new engine releases.
That's right.
And yes, we're going to say it. Jacob, say it. What's happening?
Unreal Engine 5.4 is officially released.
Oh wow!
And
yeah, we've got. I'm just skimming the release notes, just seeing if there's anything in particular I want to point out that's different from when we were reviewing the product
yeah,
page.
if you're interested in learning a little bit more about, or I would say it's half learning, half seeing our reactions to the feature list, which is quite massive. About 2 episodes back, you can watch us going over all that. There's a lot of stuff in every release, and it only gets bigger. But this is a cool release. I was actually meaning to ask you, Robert, kind of earlier on in the episode, especially from the perspective of someone who enjoys optimization, what your life is like in more recent versions of the engine versus Unreal 4 in particular. At the end, the tail of 4, let's say, and how much of your life has changed as a result of that.
For the most part, we haven't had any like huge issues with 5. Aside from some weird physics things, we like, when we had 2 versions side by side running, running the project, we really didn't have much of a performance difference. It was like a couple frames here and there at most. So frankly, hasn't changed much. I mean, I 5 seems to handle occlusion worse in my experience. And like software pre-compiled occlusion just straight up hasn't worked since 5.1 for us. But outside of that, yeah, not too different. I mean, our stuff is so the way we build things is so specific that maybe a different type of project would notice a bigger difference than we did.
Interesting.
Yeah. Physics was the biggest thing. We had a lot of pain with physics, which is, I know a couple of devs, like, they stuck to 4 because of the performance issues.
Huh. So have you gone to really dig in on Lumen, Nanite, any of the more I guess monumental changes and
I have a lot of fun playing with them, in my 17 minutes of free time I have per week. But yeah, no, not really. Like, I've messed with them for like trying to get things to run, really digging down into the nuts and bolts, trying to make it run on like the Quest, which is just not going to happen. Yeah. But I keep trying, or experimenting on different platforms in general with it. But yeah, like the way we build things, we wouldn't even be able to use Nanite and Lumen anyway, because all of our stuff is like unlit, with like full shader tricks and stuff. Like, I developed this whole thing to like fake normal maps in VR, essentially.
Cool.
So yeah.
Robert, did you see that one of the 5.4 release elements is Lumen on mobile, to which they say experimental support for Lumen on recent mobile devices using the desktop deferred render? It drives me crazy that they don't actually specify any particular devices, because our biggest question would be VR, Quest 3?
Yeah.
I mean, Quest Pro 2?
I've never even been able to get the mobile deferred renderer working on the Quest. Like, like, I've tried, but I mean, have you got it working before? I've never got it working.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I've got a video where I show one of the theaters we've done, and I'm playing with like stationary lights and some of the other elements, like, and also post-processing volumes, and it looks good, but it is a little. It took me like 3 tries to get it actually working.
It's got to be some combination of checkboxes that I just don't have right. Everything in Unreal is a checkbox. I mean, that's exciting because like at the last Unreal Unreal Fest, they did have what was it, Oppo there showing ray tracing on one of their phones. It looked pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's cool. Any 5.4 features that you're particularly excited about, Robert?
Not in particular. I mean, like some of the animation stuff is interesting, but we're not really using control rig. The built-in like renaming tool is pretty cool. That's a little tiny one that I think people have been kind of sleeping on. I've built custom tools for that. Yeah. See what else is around.
Have you played it all yet with the motion design tools?
I have not.
Me neither. I want to. I think Jonathan Winbush gave us a lot of inspiration for what is possible there. Seems like there's a lot of good support for USD now. I want to start playing with that more, especially for exporting it to Vision Pro. And by the way, it's actually worth mentioning too that not only is this the first time we're announcing 5.4 being officially released, we're already at a hot fix. Epic's already released 5.4.1, and that's not because we're particularly delayed here. It's been, I think, about a week since 5.4 came out, but I guess there must have been some pretty intense, game-breaking bugs that they jumped on.
Oh yeah, did you see that one with I think it was maps that was broken?
No, what was wrong?
If you copied a map and then pasted it right back in, it would add like empty elements, like phantom elements.
Oh no.
Yeah, that's a pretty large problem.
Yeah. Man. I was really hoping that with the 5.4 release, we'd also see that sample project they mentioned at GDC with like 500 AAA animations, but looks like that's still on its way. Maybe we'll get it by Unreal Fest.
Hopefully.
And speaking of Unreal Fest.
Yeah, speaking of Unreal Fest.
I do want to make sure that we tell all of our listeners who have any special knowledge in Unreal Engine, who have been nervous about getting up on stage, I count Robert among these people, to consider, please submit talks. The talk submissions are open for Unreal Fest in Seattle. They are open till May 22nd. And it's real simple to submit a talk. You don't have to submit a deck or a portfolio or anything like that. It's like name, biography, name of talk, description, who's your audience, what are the takeaways, are you using Unreal Engine as part of the talk, or UEFN or reality capture or whatever. They want to know you're using Epic products, but it does not take long to fill out. I have submitted a number of talks, and I'll be happy, of course, if one or two get accepted. I don't know if I actually even mentioned on the podcast that I did get a couple talks accepted for Unreal Fest Prague. This is internal to Epic. This is something special I get to do as an instructor. So they are sending me to Prague, and I'll be over there to give a talk on metahumans, and a talk I submitted called I Wish I Learned This Sooner, which is very much inspired by the Chris Murphy talks of where he'll just go through like a bunch of rapid tips in Unreal Engine. And so I'll be over in Europe talking about some very quick things that I sure do wish I knew when I first started using Unreal Engine many years ago. Robert, I like to outsource my work as much as possible. What's a couple things you wish you had learned a lot sooner in Unreal Engine?
Let's see. The size map tool is amazing.
Oh yeah. Yep. We are actively using that a lot right now to try
size
to
map tool is incredible.
Our reference chains.
A lot of little like keyboard shortcuts, like I think Shift E, like highlights all of the exact same mesh in a level. Shift B, I think I might have those backwards. You have to check. The Shift B opens up the asset you have clicked in the editor, like at a level in like in an editor window. There's a lot of stat commands. I keep like a running list of those now.
What's your favorite stat command?
I use stat RHI and stat scene rendering a lot for working with Quest. Yeah,
that's a good one.
Yeah, and I was using stat. I think maybe it's tickables for at the hackathon, because we were having this weird problem where like overlaps were eating up like 40 milliseconds of time. We're like, what the hell is happening? Yeah, and you don't really have 40 milliseconds to work with. So yeah, we had a rough time there. Like some of the ability to like build tools in Unreal. If because I really started building like tools, like crazy advanced tools, just a couple years ago. If you aren't building editor utility widgets and editor asset actions and things like that, which in 5.4 actually this is what I'm excited about. The editor utility libraries.
I don't think I know what that is. What's an editor utility library?
It allows you to create like a blueprint function library essentially, but have all of your editor utilities in a single librry instead of being spread all over the place like they may or may not be in my project. Some of the advanced sorting syntax you can use, like one of the ones I used at the hackathon, because our application ended up being like 1.4 gigs or whatever. In order to bring it down in size, was the you can actually search all your textures by dimensions. And if they're too large, you can bring them down, using the built-in texture tools, the texture compression settings. There's a lot of things. Any of that sound good?
Yeah. That's awesome. Thank you for giving me a few slides I can put up there, and I will give you no credit for any of those.
That's fine.
Jacob, any ideas I can steal?
I mean, the biggest things that I've learned in the past couple of years all have to do with the usability around the engine, which I think most people find pretty boring. So I'd probably stick to Chris
Murphy's template if I were you. I mean, the biggest things that
I am going to actually make a point to rewatch the talks he's going to make sure I'm not just repeating the same things he said.
Yeah. I think in general, in the time that I get to spend in Unreal, I get to spend 30 minutes just doing totally random stuff, and the majority of the time it's totally broken and doing nothing, but I just like right-clicking in blueprints, seeing all the new stuff and playing with it. So no, I can't say I've gotten far enough.
That's funny. Yeah. Well, cool. So yeah, I hope to see some people at Unreal Fest in Europe. I hope to see as many people as possible in Seattle. I'm going to keep saying I'm so excited about that. I've always wanted to go to Seattle, never been to Seattle. Prague as well. Seattle always seemed more in reach, so I've thought about how much I want to go to Seattle. Prague is a city I've always thought was incredibly beautiful. It never occurred to me that I'd have a good opportunity to go there, so I am excited for that. And then, of course, I hope people make it over to Unreal Fest Asia and the Gold Coast, and Singapore and Seoul and all the other great places.
Gold Coast coming up soon at the end of this month.
That's right. You're not going to be there, are you, Jacob?
I will not. I actually I was just looking at the Unreal Fest page and messaging our friends in Australia. Unfortunately, it's around like 21 hours of flying, and a business class seat is like 10K, so it's not happening. It's just not happening.
Yeah, the older you get, the more painful a long flight that can be, especially on your back.
I don't mean to be a snob, but if I'm flying over 20 hours, I'm just not flying in like economy coach. I can't do that.
Yeah.
Shout out to the people who can just like pass out on planes and maybe I just need a lot of Xanax, but it's not going to work.
Or melatonin gummies or whatever. Cool. All right. Well, we're wrapping up here, but Robert, as you know, we like to give some shout outs at the podcast toward anyone who has made our time in Unreal Engine easier, developers, plugin makers, etc. Is there anyone you would like to shout out today?
How long can this list be?
Try to keep it under 400 people.
Okay. Well, let's see. GDXR on YouTube. He does great tutorials for like Unreal stuff. He's not always right with some of his settings, but for the most part, he's really good. Tom,
I contribute to his Patreon and bought his template on the store. It's really
same.
Good.
It's good. Yeah, for what it is, it's a really good starting place. The people who maintain the Unreal expansion VR thing. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, VR,
VR
UE4.com or something like
Yeah.
that.
That whole thing, amazing. Tom Lumen, obviously, his stuff he's done over the years is incredible.
Oh, Tom Lumen?
Yeah.
Yes, right.
Yeah. All the Unreal Engine live streams that are amazing. Polyphoria.
VR extension plugin, just to shout that out properly, it's VREUE4.com. And don't be misled, it does work in UE5.
It does, yeah. Polyphoria, they were using their armor pieces for all of our characters, actually. Because we don't have a giant art team internally, so because Heartlands is enormous, so they're fantastic. Alex, you.
Well, thanks.
Yeah. I thought it was pretty funny, actually. I came back to the office one day and Nathan was trying to figure something out with like getting like a metahuman working as like a body for a VR character or whatever. It was like, I found this cool dude on YouTube who's like who has like a whole thing and he's like a download for it. I was like, is his name Alex? He was like, yeah. So yeah. I'm sure there's a lot more, but
Wait, did you just shout out Alex on the podcast?
That hasn't happened
yet.
I did, yeah.
They shouted me out like that, so thank you.
Yeah. Also, thanks for bringing me on. This was cool.
Yeah. Yes, this is a great discussion. I'm glad we were able to evangelize hackathons in general and specifically the meta ones. I think this was successful, so I hope that they'll consider doing more of them. I hope it's in other exciting places as well, more excuses to travel.
They did say, I don't know if they told us everyone, but they did, like I was talking to somebody and they said they did want to do more of these more often. So, maybe 2 a year instead of 1 a year would be great. That'd be cool,
Yeah.
Maybe do one in New York and one in San Francisco.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, I mean, at least one for every new time a headset comes out would be great. If we've got the Quest Lite coming out soon and the MetaQuest Pro 2, all sorts of fun stuff there.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Any final words, Robert or Jacob?
Don't do drugs. Stay in school. Make sure you keep your blueprints neat. And
my spaghetti would like a word with you.
And like, rate, comment, subscribe, all that.
Yeah. All right. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next time.